Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1628. The topic is training and the title is 2-day full body routine for strength, mass, and endurance. Okay, it's a mouthful. But we had a podcast listener, who is actually a former client of mine, and they were going through some changes to their programming and changes to their routine, and had a follow-up question. And as I always do, I always like being able to help everybody and answer questions. So what they were asking about is they have a very demanding job, super physical demanding job. They also do jiu-jitsu, so they do some MMA kind of wrestling and stuff, and they still want to do strength training and aesthetic development. So they kind of want everything, of course, which I love. So their question was, in order to fit in the long, full, demanding days of work and jiu-jitsu, they said that it allows them to be super consistent with 2 days of weight training a week, maybe 3, but they know they could definitely do 2. So they were wondering, it's a 2-day split even worthwhile? Is that enough? The answer is hell freaking yes. Absolutely it is. Especially considering they're eating very healthy, meaning they're eating in a way that they're going to maximize the adaptation response from the training. So if they create muscle tissue damage, which then we would hope would lead to muscle tissue growth if they want bigger muscles. If they create damage in their training properly, that damage can take, it could take no arguments, 24 hours, up to 48, up to even 72 hours. So if you went into the gym and say you destroyed your legs on a Monday, your body's still trying to repair that tissue and build that tissue all the way through Tuesday and Wednesday and probably even into Thursday. So if they're doing 2 days a week and they're doing it properly, the days in between the training, their body's going to be wanting to put on new muscle tissue. It's going to want to be adapting the nervous system for the increased strength response they wanted from their training. That's when the benefits of training happen, is actually after training. When we're training, we're beating the living crap out of the body. We're tearing it apart. And then in between our training sessions is when it's putting on new strength, new muscle, doing all the new things, all the good stuff. So since his nutrition is consistent during that entire time between training sessions, he'll be able to maximize his muscle building response. So if you do 2-day splits, like 2 workouts a week, if your nutrition isn't on point, then you're not going to be able to fully, optimize the adaptations. So you're going to have time that's kind of wasted between training. But if your eating is on point, then you're going to optimize all the demands from the training, and it'll make it even more worth it. So that's definitely the first thing you want to do, is if you're only training 2 to 3 times a week, but you need it to be the most impactful, then you have to have your nutrition on point. As I've been mentioning on our website, www.brutalirongym.com, you can go to the free nutrition education link, and on the first thing on that page is create your own nutrition program. It's a document that shows you the podcast paired with it. You listen to the podcast, go through, set up your calories, your protein, meal timing, all that stuff. So it takes you through it totally for free. And then if you have any questions, you can always shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. So set up your own nutrition program for free. So that's the first thing. If you're going to do only 2 workouts a week, can it be useful? Absolutely, but you need to make sure your nutrition is on point. Now, what do those workouts look like? Well, I typically would recommend somebody does a full body routine, so that way you're training each muscle of the body twice a week. And we're going to do a blend of strength and muscle mass, kind of muscle damage, which leads to muscle mass, as well as having controlled rest periods. And I'll talk about here as well how to blend in muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance. So if we want everything, we want strength, mass, muscular and cardiovascular endurance, you even want increased mobility, then you can absolutely achieve all that. So what your workouts need to look like is the first thing you want to have in your workouts, is this is per workout, is a proper warm-up. Now we have podcast 1112 is a training podcast titled The Best Warm-Up Routine. So you can listen to that. It'll teach you how to put together the best warm-up routine. Now, the best routine for warm-ups is going to have corrective exercises built into it. So I have a corrective exercise specialist certification, blah, 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 blah. What that means is just that when I write programming for people, I know how to not screw people up long term. So I can make you stronger and healthier. I can have you bigger muscles and healthier. So you can achieve your goals and be healthier, more mobile, all the good stuff. So we don't want to wear out our body while we try to make it amazing. We want to build it and improve upon it. So having a proper warm-up routine ensures that you have correct movement patterns for the exercises in the workout, which will alleviate joint stress, and it helps optimize performance. So that's going to help you get the best stimulus from the training while also reducing injury concerns and increasing your longevity. So you absolutely want to properly warm up. That can take maybe 8, 10, 12 minutes. That's it. It doesn't have to take any longer than that. And there are actually movements that can help strengthen your core, help improve mobility in the hips and the shoulders, your posture. It's actually really beneficial stuff. So it's not just fluffy stuff that you're doing until you get to the good stuff. This is the good stuff. So podcast 1112 will teach you more about how to make the right and the best type of warm-up routine. So you want to start your warm-up with that, and your workout with that. And essentially what it's going to be is it's going to be some movement that addresses shoulder mobility and thoracic strength. So posture and positioning of the shoulders. Then you're going to have some exercise that works on core strength and stability, and then something that works on hip mobility and balancing of the hips. So those three things. You're pretty much just going to do like a little circuit of 3 movements. Now, sometimes you can find one movement that blends 2 or 3 of those components in, but in general, you just kind of do a little circuit at the beginning of that. That's also beneficial because it helps kind of prepare your adrenaline and endorphins. It helps give your body time to produce endorphins, which are kind of natural painkillers, which increases your ability to push harder in the major movements. And then also it allows you time to increase your adrenaline, which increases focus and aggression for the workout. So very, very, very important. Absolutely cannot skip that stuff. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to move into a lower body strength movement with an opposing movement accessory. What this means is we can basically break down the lower body into, we have squats and hinges. So what this means is I have a movement where my torso stays pretty much upright and I bend at my knees. Think of like a front squat. Then you have movements where your torso changes its tilting angle, it changes its angle, and you hinge from the hips. Think of a stiff-legged deadlift. Now, those are pretty extreme variations of the two, but if you think of a front squat, your torso stays upright and you're bending through your knees. So your hip joint is bending, of course, but you're not changing kind of the loading tension on the hips. It's basically the knees that are doing like a lot of the work there. Whereas when you think of a stiff leg deadlift, the knees don't change much at all in regards to like degree of bend. Most of the angle bend is coming from the hips, and that's actually causing the weight load to travel through the hips more so than the knees because the torso is changing angles. So all of our lower body movements, you think of like front squat is an uprated torso, so that would be kind of like a knee bend type focus. Think of a step up. Think of a walking lunge. Those things are all pretty much uprated torso, a lot of knee bending. Okay. Then if we think of the hip hinge, you can think of a stiff leg deadlift, an RDL, like a Romanian deadlift, a regular conventional deadlift, even a sumo deadlift. I know like sumo deadlifts, depending on somebody's like limb lengths, they can get pretty uprated in their torso. So that might be something that's kind of a blend between the two. But we can think of the lower body as there's squatting movements, then there's deadlifting movements. So knee bends and hip hinges. What you want to do is one workout of the week, you want to focus on one of those two as your main heavy thing. So maybe I'm going to do squats as my main heavy thing for the first workout of the week. Then the second workout of the week, my main heavy thing will be a deadlift variation. So that's a great way to set it up. Now, what you pair with that main movement is the opposing movement with something that's not as aggressive. So, if I did a squat as my main movement, I wouldn't want to do a hip hinge variation of something as my accessory movement, but I would want something that's not super duper crazy aggressive and hard and heavy. So that might be a hip thrust. So I could do a barbell squat variation with a hip thrust. Now that could be a barbell hip thrust, that could be a dumbbell hip thrust, there can be a lot of different variations of hip thrusts. But a hip thrust doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on the body, doesn't really kill your joints, but it's a good muscle challenge, and it's a muscle challenge at the hip hinge, which is what we'd want considering we were doing a squatting motion and knee bend as our main movement. So the second workout of the week, I might have a heavy deadlift, and then I would pair with it something that's lighter, not as aggressive, but has more of an uprighted torso. So I might think of step-ups. So maybe I would do, barbell conventional deadlifts, and then if I had a trap bar, maybe I'd do trap bar step-ups. And that would be kind of like my pairing for lower body. So after you do the proper warm-up, you do lower body strength movement, a very heavy movement, paired with something that's kind of like an assistance, kind of an accessory, kind of bodybuilder-y type movement. So again, squat and a hip thrust would be an example for workout number 1. A deadlift and step-ups would be an example for workout number 2. Now, what do I do for my strength movements in regards to sets, reps, and rests? Make it pretty easy is 3 to 5. So 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps with 3 to 5 minutes of rest. Pretty easy. Now, there's a lot of ways you can play around with that, for sure, but this is going to give you somewhere in the general ballpark to start with, and then you can modify it from there. So 3 to 5 working sets of 3 to 5 reps of 3 to 5 minute rests. Now, that's for the strength movement. Now, what do you do for the accessory movement? That one, you want to look for generally whatever the rep range is that puts you under the time under tension of 20 to 40 seconds. So if you do 10 reps and that takes you 22 seconds, great. So you want to do whatever the repetitions would take to be between 20 to 40 seconds of that accessory movement. Okay? Okay. Then what we want to do is after the lower body work, we go to upper body work. And we do a similar thing. We want to have a upper body strength movement paired with the opposing movement accessory. Now upper body we're going to split into push and pull. We're going to push things away from us on one at a time, one of the workouts, then we're going to pull things towards us, one of the workouts. Now, again, that's what our strength movement is. So maybe my first workout of the week, my strength movement for the upper body is an overhead press. Press. So it's a push. And then I'm going to pair that with a pulling movement, but something that's not super aggressive, super miserable on the joints. Maybe I'll do just like body weight pull-ups, so not even weighted. Or I could do band-assisted pull-ups. But again, somewhere around that 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. Maybe you could do some one-arm dumbbell rows. Even in like a bird dog position, which is a really fun kind of balance challenge. So you would have the overhead press be your strong, aggressive, heavy thing. That's the 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps of 3 to 5 minute rests. But you're going to pair that with something that's complementary on the pulling movements, but it's 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. So then on the second workout of the week, you would pick a heavy, hard, aggressive pull movement. Maybe that would be weighted pull-ups, maybe it's seal rows, whatever you might want to do, barbell bent over rows. And then you would pair with that a pushing movement, but something that's, again, 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. So maybe dumbbell Larson press, which is a no-leg drive chest press. Really good chest isolation, really good push isolation. And so that gives us kind of our first main components, the big parts of the workout. So I'm going to read back through that again. So the first thing you would do is a proper warm-up. Again, podcast 1112 will teach you how to do that. You have something for thoracic mobility, shoulder mobility, something for core strength and bracing, then something for hip mobility. So you're going to do a circuit of those things, like 3 working sets for each of those things. Then you're going to do a lower body superset, like pair 2 things together. You're going to do, say, squats and hip thrust. So the squats, you're going to do 3 to 5 reps. The hip thrust, you're going to do 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. You're going to do 3 to 5 sets with about 3 to 5 minute rests in between each round. Okay? Then you would go to an overhead press and maybe one-arm dumbbell rows. So that would be the upper body stuff. So again, you do the overhead press, that would be 3 to 5 reps. The one-arm dumbbell rows, 20 to 40 seconds of timer retention. And in total, you do 3 to 5 sets with 3 to 5 minutes of rest. So that all in total will take you about 40-ish minutes, 40, 50 minutes, once you get into the rhythm of doing it. And you kind of are familiar with the movements you're doing, you're familiar with the format. That will take you maybe about 40 minutes. So then, if you have the time, you can finish with something called muscle cardio, which is basically just using weights to do cardiovascular activity. And this is a great way to blend muscular endurance and cardiovascular endurance. So that way you can have kind of the best of all worlds. If you want to learn more about muscle cardio, you can go to our website and you can find all of our old podcasts. There's instructions on how to get to our older podcasts. But podcast 30, so way back when, podcast 30, was a training podcast titled Muscle Cardio, How to Lose Fat Without Losing Muscle. And what that means is we're going to use weights and weight training to do our cardiovascular work rather than just basic cardio, because we want the cardiovascular stress, but we also want some muscular endurance stress. We also want to target some extra muscles for extra growth. We want to work on mobility, on balance. There's just so many more benefits we can get from using weights as our cardio rather than just basic traditional cardio. So what you would want to do with your ending work, the end of the workout, would be your muscle cardio circuit. You can think of it as like a finishing circuit. Now, typically with this, you would pick a couple exercises. You'd pick 2, 3, maybe 4 exercises. And you would do them as a circuit. So exercise 1 and exercise 2 and exercise 3 and exercise 4. You'd want to do things that are low joint impact, things that aren't super stressful on the body. And each exercise should be done roughly between 20 to 40 seconds of time under tension. And you want to do, again, 3 to 5 rounds. Now, the rest is actually done in ratios. I would want to time the amount of time that it takes me to go through all my movements. So if I'm doing 2 movements, just how long it takes me to go through both movements, or 3 or 4. So how long it takes you to go through a working set of all movements, that's a unit of work. Okay, that's how long it took you to do the work. So maybe it took you 3 minutes. You want to take anywhere from half to twice that amount of time as rest. So 1.5 to 6 minutes of rest. Now that's a huge ratio, but for some people they're going to be, not as cardiovascularly fit, so they're going to need longer rests. Some people are more cardiovascularly fit, so they need shorter rests. If you can be ready to go in less than half that time, you probably didn't pick hard enough movements or heavy enough weights. If you take longer than twice that amount of time to feel ready, then you've done too much. So reduce the difficulty of what you're doing and try to make it to where you only need twice the rest at most. So again, we said it's a blend of kind of 2, 3, or 4 exercises. What you want to pick through is kind of a blend of what the body can do. I'm going to give you 5 categories that you can pick any of these categories depending on what you want to emphasize. But there's almost a limitless way that you could create this. So the 5 basic categories of movement are squat, hinge, push, pull, and carry. That's what our body does. It squats, it hinges at the hips, it pushes things, it pulls things, and it carries things. So you can pick any combination of those. But let's say you want to do bodybuilding and you're like, I want bigger biceps. Well, then just freaking add the biceps there. That's great too. Just pick anything that you want to put extra emphasis on, and that could be part of your finishing circuit. So if you want better aesthetics, maybe you just do lateral raises, bicep curls, and skull crushers. And all of a sudden you get bigger shoulders and arms. That's awesome. If you want a bigger booty, maybe you do walking lunges. You do 4 extra types of glute bridges. You do variations of things that target the glutes. But the idea is to create this circuit at the end, 2, 3, 4 movements that you want to blend in. If you can, blend in like core challenge, like maybe there's something in there that challenges your abs to have to stabilize your position. You want to blend in unilateral aspects, so that way the body gets to work on like one limb at a time. So walking lunges makes you have to work on one leg balance to the other leg, that kind of thing. That's great to do. And again, you want to pick low joint impact options. Okay. So that's going to be how you would structure the workout if you're going to do a full body workout and you're going to do it twice a week. Can you get away with this 3 times a week? Probably, but I'd be very careful. It might be too aggressive. So 2 full body workouts a week. You have a proper warm-up. Again, listen to podcast 1112. Then you have a lower body circuit where you're doing 2 movements back-to-back. One's super heavy, one's kind of more of an accessory movement. Then you do an upper body circuit. One's super heavy, one's an accessory movement. And then you do a finishing circuit where you pick 2, 3, 4 movements. You kind of do them all back-to-back-to-back. And you take 3 to 5 rounds, 20 to 40 seconds of time and attention for each exercise, and a 2-to-1 to 1-to-2 ratio for the work time to the rest time. Okay, so that's, I'm assuming, very quick, but I wanted it to be what I would consider relatively simple. If you have any follow-up questions, shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. I'll be happy to help. Also, we do have our one-on-one coaching, so if you want, we can work together to create a routine that matches your schedule, your abilities, your goals, even your equipment. What equipment you have, what kind of training style that you want. Do you want to blend in, general physical preparedness for military prep or a firefighter, or do you want to do aesthetics? You want to work on more on building certain muscles? Whatever it might be, let me know. If you want, we can work on it 1-to-1. Set that stuff up, work together for a month or 2. We have no contracts for any of the client work I work with. If you're happy with me, keep working with me. That kind of thing. If somebody's unhappy, I wouldn't want them to feel forced. So we don't have any contracts. So we'll just work together, set it all up, and then you can run with it on your own. So if you like the idea of what I presented in today's podcast, but you want help setting it up, let me know. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. Okay, well, if you like today's podcast, please share the podcast when you do. Let people know that we answer questions for free. You can even explain how the podcast has helped you. That can get them interested in how it can help them as well. But thank you to those who do share the podcast. It does help. It does make a big difference. Thank you to those who donate to support the podcast. It does have a high hosting cost every year, and I give an hour to it every day. Sorry, I've been kind of missing a couple days here. I've been super sick. But I'm working my way back at it. I'll get back to it. So I do appreciate the donations. They help keep everything up and running. If you want to donate, you can do that on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. Even just $5 a month helps a lot. Okay, well, if you like the information we share in our podcast, find us on social media. I'm on Instagram and on YouTube. Find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.